you had to start paying charges for this and that, for bins, bin collection, for, you know, all the kind of different things that we pay for here. And unemployment also went through the roof at this stage, and they laid off tens of thousands of workers in the public sector as well. So this, I mean, of course, this was partly because of the banking crisis and the property crisis that happened, but it was also part of the global neoliberal agenda, which was obviously taking place across the world in the 80s with Thatcher and Reagan and so on, in destroying working class organisation, destroying the welfare state, destroying public services. And so this was obviously a great excuse for the Swedish ruling class to do this without having a huge fight back from the working class. And the crisis gave them an excuse to do that. And the situation now is quite interesting, because the last sort of we've had a right-wing government in for the last 6-7 years or so, and they've continued the work that the Social Democrats started in cutting the public sector and so on, but they've just taken it a step further. And there's privatisations in all sectors, in education, in healthcare. All the pharmacies that used to be state-owned have been sold off, opened up to the market. All these things, cutbacks in absolutely every sector, everywhere. And one thing that's absolutely disgraceful that's happening at the moment is that people who are on sick leave, they might have cancer, they might have serious illnesses and so on, are basically being taken off their sort of social insurance payments and being told to go out and get a job. And these are people who are on chemotherapy and I mean absolutely amazing stuff, you know, and they're just being told you have to go out and work, you're fit for work. Which is obviously not true, but this is the stage. This is the stage where we come to, now, and that's why I think it's very funny when you hear sort of Labour Party ministers here in Ireland saying things like about the unemployment benefit system and whatever. And I think someone actually said that they wanted to have it like the Swedish system, and that sounds great, sounds brilliant. Yeah. We want the Swedish system, yeah, that's great. When you actually look at the Swedish system, they cut off your social welfare if you haven't got a job in 2 years, or if you refuse to go and work for free. And so that's the actual situation that's going on now. But that also means that there's a rising level of anger amongst the Swedish working class. And we haven't seen huge amounts of struggle and strikes and fightbacks and so on, but it's bubbling underneath the surface, I would say. And with the global economic situation, and especially the Eurozone, which is most likely going to collapse very soon, it's likely that the Swedish economy will go down with the Eurozone, and then we might see more kind of fight back in Sweden as well against what's happening all across the world. And there are things like the global Occupy movement, for example. They have an Occupy Stockholm, they have an Occupy Gothenburg, they have an Occupy in almost every single Swedish city and town, which is great. So things are kind of spreading. Okay, so I think I'm just going to try and conclude a little bit. I know I left out some things, but I'll take some questions and kind of stuff, you know, we'll discuss some things. Just to conclude, I think the point of this talk is to put the Swedish model and the welfare state in a historical perspective. And for me, the point is to say that, look, this welfare state came about in a particular time after the Second World War, when it was the golden years of capitalism, the biggest boom that capitalism had ever seen. And this was not something that's normal to capitalism, it's abnormal. So I would say that the welfare state in Sweden is actually something that's abnormal to capitalism. It's not something that the capitalist system produces willfully, or because suddenly we feel like the capitalist system feels like, okay, now we'll have a bit more equality or whatever. It doesn't work like that, and of course now we're in a global economic crisis, and the system today cannot give working class people a welfare state as they could in the 50s and 60s and 70s. It's just not possible. And I think and a lot of people who actually proclaim this kind of Swedish model actually admit that. So if you ask, for example, people in the Labour Party, you'd say to them, well, look, this is not possible because we're in an economic crisis. You can't, it's just not working. And they would actually say, oh yeah, no, we agree with that, but that's why we have to sort out the economic crisis first by cutbacks, austerity measures, and all those things. And of course for us then, the thing is to say, well yes, the system can't give a welfare state to us, so that therefore there must be something wrong with the system. And that's, I think, what we have to say. And we have to say that we demand more, but because we demand another way of organising society and another system. And I think we have to, of course, defend the welfare state when it's being attacked. And like in Britain, where they're really hammering the NHS at the moment, you have to stand up and defend these services and the things, because it's not like these things were just given to us either. I mean, the working class fought for these things and struggled for these things, and they were only given to us because we fought for it. And therefore we have to, of course, defend it, but we also have to understand that it's not possible to have that welfare state unless you have the same boom that you had in the 50s and 60s, which of course is not going to happen. So we have to understand that the struggle to defend our services is a struggle against the system itself and against capitalism, and for a better world for all of us. And also to say, I mean, it's quite clear that while there was a good welfare system in Sweden and so on, if you look at the rest of the world, and you might say that capitalism works because it worked in Sweden in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but it didn't work anywhere else in the 50s and 60s and 70s. There were people starving in Africa, and in most parts of the world people were poor. So it's quite obvious that capitalism doesn't work, and I think for all of us, while we struggle for our services, to defend our public hospitals and healthcare and education and so on, we also fight for a system that can actually give those things to us, and not the capitalist system, which is for greed, for profits, for the rich, and will not give us what we need.
Thanks very much, Madeline. Just a couple of announcements to make before I open it up to the floor. We have a bookmarks book stall in the Phoenix Suite. It's excellent, very comprehensive array of books there, which will be open all day today and again up to the afternoon tomorrow. The next meeting in this room is at 3:45.